Hey everybody, welcome to the channel! Hey guys, we're your hosts, Em and Jay, and today we're talking about the 4th episode of Netflix's Shira Season 4. This episode reintroduces Natasa and Spinnerella, two characters that we've been interested in seeing more of. Unfortunately, they don't really do anything with the two of them. Natasa and Spinnerella are interesting because they were members of the first Princess Alliance, and after it fell apart they were the only two to stay loyal to it, so they have a lot of potential for world building, and also exploring the history of the Princess Alliance and everyone involved in it. Yet they're so underutilized, even though they got a lot of media attention for being diverse, and they were marketed like they would be regular members of the cast like Mermista and Perfuma are, but we haven't seen them in quite a while. They're usually just background characters. Sometimes they get to fight, but a lot of the time when they are on screen they're made out to be jokes. It's disappointing since this show is missing a lot of world building. These two characters could help to flesh out the world and also get some interesting character development, but here they're just part of another fight, like with the finale of season 1. To be honest, they could probably be replaced with anybody. They're on the mural in the war room in Bright Moon, so they must have been prominent members of the Alliance, so we're left confused as to why they don't do anything with them. It feels like they were only included so the show could get a lot of positive press, and that's pretty disappointing. I'm also confused as to how old they're supposed to be. Glimmer was really young when her dad died, which is what led to the Princess Alliance falling apart in the first place, so if Natasa and Spinnerella were part of that original alliance, then they should be adults like Angela and Castaspella, but they look, act, and are treated like they're teenagers. I guess it's kind of like how Entrapta looks like a teen, but is apparently closer to 30. It'd be great to get some clarification on this. The episode begins with the rebellion stopping a Horde transport in the Whispering Woods. They've gotten some intel that Catra is moving a big weapon today, and this should be it. Bo speculates what Entrapta might be working on, so they still think that Entrapta is with the Horde, while the Horde thinks Entrapta went back to the Princess Alliance, something Catra might use to her advantage. But when they open the transport, it's empty, only for the group to get ambushed by a bunch of Horde bots. Well, they've fought bots before, but they end up getting pretty roughed up and have to retreat back to the camp. Back at camp, Glimmer asks if everyone's okay, and they admit that they've been better. Apparently, this isn't the first time this has happened, and Glimmer laments that the Horde keeps being 2 steps ahead of them, no matter where she sends everyone, no doubt thanks to Double Trouble's Flutterina, and laments that she's stuck in Bright Moon still. They try to stay positive while Bo asks what the new plan is, only for Swiftwind to tear through the curtain and ask, "Did someone say Swiftwind?" Glimmer yells that no one said Swiftwind, and for once she and us are on the same page. But Swiftwind actually does have something important to say this time. He traced the track of the transport, and it turns out it came from the far side of Bright Moon, so that might be where they're keeping the weapon. The captain suggests that a small team might be able to get in and out without the Horde noticing. Everyone agrees that it's time to go, except for Spinnerella, who's worried about Natasa's arm, but Natasa says that she's actually just jealous that she was able to defeat 2 more bots than her. So it turns out they're competitive. This is their stick for the entire episode, just trying to one-up each other with how many bots they've destroyed. I guess one character trait is better than no character traits, but they're kind of annoying everybody, and Adora tells them they need to go to the war room now to make plans. I'm starting to see why they're never brought on missions. They could do so much with these characters. Instead, they're just having them be competitive and get on everyone's nerves. Glimmer's worried about sending everyone back out there when they're still not sure about what's going on with the Horde, when she runs into Flutterina, literally. Flutterina apologizes and asks if they're going on another mission, and wants to come along, but Glimmer tells her not this time and that they're not all going. Glimmer walks off dejected while Flutterina calls back to her telling her to have fun on the mission. This is war. It's not fun. Flutterina gets a conniving look in her eye before running off to meet up with Catra. Catra says she can't get over how ridiculous Double Trouble looks, and DT agrees with her, saying that it was the perfect disguise to fool the princesses, someone ridiculously cutesy and pink. I don't really appreciate how they're talking about the girly feminine archetype. They're acting like it's silly and that the princesses are so pathetic for liking Flutterina because she's pink. There's nothing wrong with being a girly girl, and there isn't really a character in the show to represent that archetype, even though it's something certain audiences can find relatable. But DT transforms back into the lizard form and raves about their performance, but Catra insists on getting to the point. DT updates her on the state of things with the rebels, and kind of seems to have enjoyed their suffering. I think DT might be a bit of a sadist, fawning over how demoralized they were. Catra asks if there's any intel on Shira, but DT doesn't understand why she has to be so serious when this is supposed to be fun. But Catra reminds them that this is supposed to be war, but DT just says that there's no reason it can't be both. Yeah, what's more fun than watching people die and suffer? But for once we actually agree with Catra. DT says that Shira is putting together a team to find Hordak's new weapon, but Catra says they'll see it when the time is ready, and DT enthuses about the foreshadowing. They're really playing up the campy theater kid angle. As far as the whole flood arena being a plant for the Horde, I really think this could have been handled better. First of all, the rebellion gets a new recruit in forever, and all of a sudden the Horde is 2 steps ahead of them, so it's pretty obvious that she's a spy, even if we hadn't been told directly. We got some comments on our previous Shira video that gave some good suggestions on how to improve this plot point. In the first half of season 1, they were recruiting princesses basically every episode, but they stopped doing that as the series went on. But if they had kept introducing new characters to join the Princess Alliance, then a mole plot point would have been more engaging. Maybe it could have showed Double Trouble sneaking off to visit Catra, but not shown us what the disguise was. That way we can have more characters to play off of, but also more intrigue. They can introduce characters they've already named like Peekaboo and Sweet Bee, or the Star Sisters, but also other ones like Prince Zed. Maybe in this case, instead of being Horde Prime's son, he can be another clone that Hordak was trying to make, but he ended up being good and joined the Princess Rebellion, and he could act as a red herring for the Double Trouble plot point. Back in Bright Moon, the team heads out, and Glimmer's left behind, but this time she's not going to some boring meeting. She actually starts playing around with her new powers, now that she's using all the Moonstone strength instead of just half of it. This is kind of a weird tonal shift. She was just really worried about everyone, but now she's having a lot of fun. Maybe she's just trying to blow off some steam, but Shadow Weaver compliments her impressive powers. It turns out she's been gardening, without Glimmer's knowledge. Kinda weird since she's the Queen of Bright Moon now, and Shadow Weaver is still technically a prisoner. Also, there don't seem to be any guards around, which is kind of concerning. How is all this going on without Glimmer knowing about it? She really needs to have a talk with the guards. Shadow Weaver starts saying that she can see how she's King Micah's daughter, and that she's never seen a sorcerer as powerful as him. But Glimmer starts saying that she knows she'll never be as good as either of her parents. Shadow Weaver says that's true. She'll actually be better than both of them. Then she does this evil chuckle.
You'll be better.
It's all very manipulative, but she's also not really trying to hide it. She says she's been watching her, creepy, and that she sees Glimmer as trying to be like her mother, a queen who watches over things from afar. She asks Glimmer if she remembers the raw power she had when they invaded the Horde, but Glimmer says she remembers her draining her, which is true. At least Glimmer remembers that. Shadow Weaver says that is true, but she also helped her become more powerful, and Glimmer says that she doesn't need her power anymore, but Shadow Weaver claims that it's useless if she doesn't use it. Okay. She then tells Glimmer she has to decide what kind of queen she wants to be, but Glimmer says she already decided, and she's someone who doesn't take advice from prisoners. But she is the kind of queen who allows prisoners to roam around the castle grounds, without guards, and lets them make gardens, apparently without any kind of permission. She then teleports away, but the seeds have been planted, and Shadow Weaver is clearly up to something. Shira's team is checking out where the transport came from. She tells everyone to be quiet, but Natasa brags about how she's being so much more quiet than Spinnerella. Really? You're being competitive over this? Bo has to shush them. I can't believe we waited to see them again for this. It turns out to be another ambush and they're attacked by more robots. Natasa destroys 2 robots, which she gloats about, but then a new model they've never seen before shows up. It drills into the ground and doesn't seem to do anything after that, so Bo goes up to inspect it, assuming it must be some kind of surveillance drone, but then it starts beeping like a bomb. It ends up exploding in Bo's face. Natasa's able to put a shield around the rest of the group, but the blast ends up tearing through it, so the others get injured but not as badly as Bo, who's unresponsive. They take him back to Bright Moon where Shira uses her healing powers. It's cool to see that come up again. It's been a whole season since we've seen her do this. Bo wakes up and asks if they won, because he feels like they didn't. No, that actually went really bad. Apparently Shira wasn't able to heal him fully, and Adora says that he's going to need some more time to recover, but I wonder why Shira was able to heal Shadow Weaver fully when she was dying. It would be good for them to explain the limits of her powers. Glimmer is frustrated about sending her friends into more ambushes, so the captain of the guard suggests they might be tracking Shira. Both Adora and Glimmer start blaming themselves, Glimmer for sending them out there to begin with, and Adora for leading the Horde to them, since they're apparently just going to automatically believe this is the case, without any questions, or suggesting other theories they could explore. Bo tries to reassure them, but Adora decides to go out there alone, that way she wouldn't be putting anybody else in danger. Glimmer tries to dissuade her, but but Adora is adamant. She leaves and Glimmer goes back to looking after Bo, promising that she's going to take care of this. So now they're not on the same page and are going to try to solve the situation alone. This can only end well. It's also revealed that the captain of the guard was actually Double Trouble in disguise. DT calls Catra and gloats about everything that's happening, like making fun of Bo getting injured, and commenting that this happened because he doesn't own a real shirt. He actually does, he just doesn't like to wear them. Catra's annoyed by this until DT imitates Shira. She thinks it's so funny she wants to see it again. But DT's just happy that she's finally having fun with this whole war thing. But DT pointing this out makes Catra go back to being serious. Double Trouble tells Catra they're sending Shira's coordinates, because she's going after the bot that hurt her friend. Catra rolls her eyes and says that's typical for a hero, but the Horde will be long gone by then. But she thinks it might be worth a delay if they can take down Shira. DT asks if she's having fun yet, and Catra admits that she thinks she is. And just like that, we're not on the same page anymore. It was nice while it lasted. Back in Bright Moon, Glimmer goes to see Shadow Weaver, who's still gardening, but at least she has some guards now. She tells the guards to leave, which is concerning. And then she tells Shadow Weaver that the queen demands her help. Oh no. Glimmer says that Shadow Weaver knows Catra best, so she wants her help thinking like Catra. That way maybe they can figure out Catra's next move. Does Shadow Weaver know Catra best? She's the lady who abused her for years. You'd think that Adora would know Catra best. They grew up together, and they were very close. At least they're supposed to be, but Glimmer believes that Shadow Weaver knows her better? Shadow Weaver says that she doesn't need to think like Catra. She's more powerful than her. All she really needs is a simple location spell, something that's useful for any sorcerer. So, Casta Spella couldn't have done a simple location spell? Casta is a member of the rebellion, isn't she? She's Glimmer's aunt. They could really bond. Wouldn't it be better to go to her instead of Shadow Weaver, who abused Catra and Adora and tortured Glimmer? Shadow Weaver starts the spell, and Glimmer is shocked to see that she's been growing magical plants this whole time. Well, that was pretty obvious. But then she starts asking what the different plants do. Oh, I'm very concerned for Bright Moon. She tells Glimmer to add the next ingredient, and when it starts glowing, she gets excited and asks if she's the one who did that. And Shadow Weaver nods. Yep, Glimmer's going down this road. Time for short-term gain and long-term pain. Shadow Weaver helps her complete the spell, and they find out that the Horde's been operating out of the Whispering Woods this whole time. Glimmer realizes that Shira's looking in the wrong place, and she can tell her where the Horde is really hiding. But then Glimmer thinks that if the Horde is tracking Shira, that they'll just clear out before she gets there, because they'll be able to see that she's coming. So Shadow Weaver says that Catra's focusing on Shira, so she won't be expecting an attack. Glimmer asks if she's suggesting to use Shira as bait, but Shadow Weaver insists that it's more of a distraction. Kinda the same thing, but she says it's Glimmer's choice, and asks her what she'll do. It cuts to Adora off tracking the bot. Natasa and Spinnerella are with her despite the fact that she said she was going to go alone so no one else would get hurt. Spinnerella comes in from scanning the area saying she sees no sign of the Horde, so Adora says that she'll press on alone. But Spinnerella insists that princesses stick together, but then where have you guys been on all the other Princess Alliance missions? But I digress. But Natasa cuts her off, saying that she just wants to kill more bots so she can win their little competition. Then they start arguing about how this is the reason why no one comes to game night anymore. Nets insists the reason why people stopped coming to game night was because Spinnerella started serving vegetable platters. You guys had a game night? In the middle of a war? When we asked for more Natasa and Spinnerella, this is not what we meant. Luckily, the robot shows up. It attacks them, so they're forced to fall back, only to find themselves surrounded and backed against a wall. Adora pulls her sword out, but can't Spinnerella just fly them out of there? This moment is supposed to be really tense, but it kinda gets undercut when you remember Spinnerella's powers. It cuts to Glimmer, who's decided to invade the Horde base alone, which seems like a really bad idea. What if something happens to her? It's not like she's the most important person to Bright Moon or anything. She blasts her way into the base, and initially Catra mistakes her for Double Trouble, but apparently DT can't copy people's powers. Glimmer fires at Catra, but she manages to evade her blasts, but Glimmer damages some of the robots in the process. She tries to gloat about how Catra is defenseless, since all of her robots were sent after Shira, but Catra just says that she's using Adora as bait, and she didn't know Glimmer would be capable of such a thing. I think that just proves how little Catra knows about Glimmer, honestly. Glimmer tries to corner Catra on a catwalk, but she manages to slip away. She uses her whip to drag Glimmer off the catwalk, but this causes Glimmer to fire wildly around the compound. Everything starts exploding around them. They keep fighting despite this. Catra bites Glimmer Glimmer and then uses her whip to grab her again, but Glimmer uses the whip as a conductor to shock Catra, much like how Shadow Weaver did last season. You'd think Catra would have learned from the last time, but I guess it was Glimmer who learned something. Catra decides to unleash the latest model of that robot, saying it'll destroy half of the Whispering Woods if it goes off, so Glimmer will have to choose between catching her or stopping the robot. But before Catra is able to make her escape, rubble from the compound ends up falling on her, and she's trapped underneath. She's lucky that it didn't crush her, but this was also really convenient for Glimmer. It would have been cool if Glimmer had shot into the air and caused the rubble to fall on her instead of it just happening on its own. But Glimmer is able to teleport the robot into the air so it can detonate without harming the woods. It also vaporizes itself in the process. But before Glimmer is able to go back for Catra, Double Trouble shows up. DT explains that people in Bright Moon were concerned because the Queen disappeared on a mission, and apparently didn't tell anyone about it. Catra's relieved to see DT, but tries to hide it, and the two of them are able to escape together just before the compound is destroyed. Back with the Princess Alliance, Natasa has a net up and she's trying to protect them, but it's taking a toll on her and she's not sure how long she can keep this up. Glimmer shows up looking very confident and asks if they need any help, before teleporting away and destroying the bots easily. But Spinnerella notices that there's an extra bot, so she pushes it off of a cliff, but is still caught in its explosion. Natasa's really worried about her, but when Spins wakes up she says that she destroyed 14 bots, which is more than Natasa, so she wins. So it turns out that she's just as competitive. I wouldn't be annoyed if there was more to their characters than this. When they get back to Bright Moon, Glimmer is ecstatic about their win, and she's telling Bo about how awesome she was on the field, and that he should have seen her. But Adora isn't happy about being used as a decoy, and she's still worried about possibly being tracked by the Horde. But Glimmer says she's decided what kind of queen she wants to be. She wants to be out there fighting alongside her friends, and not observing from afar anymore. She almost wins them over, until she excitedly announces that she's training with Shadow Weaver to improve her magic. Adora is furious for obvious reasons. I can't believe Glimmer would just excitedly talk about this, especially to Adora. She abused her and Catra, tortured Glimmer, betrayed her father and Mysticor, killed a man, and betrayed the whole planet to the Horde. Glimmer has no reason to trust her, but she went from being a prisoner to the Queen's instructor. Makes complete sense. Both Adora and Bo try to express their concerns, but Glimmer blows them off and goes to the kitchen to get cake, so they can celebrate their victory. Oh, Bright Moon is definitely doomed. DT and Catra make it back to the Fright Zone, and DT asks how she's going to explain this to Hordak. She says he'll thank her for testing the bots before they move on with their real plan. I'm not sure why they're worried about Hordak. Catra already kicked his butt. He's not all that threatening. But Catra does thank DT for saving her, and admits she doesn't know what she would have done if they hadn't shown up. DT says they live to serve for a price, so Catra sadly forks over a bag of money, while DT says they'll keep a better eye on Glimmer, and is surprised to see just how powerful she is. Catra says it wouldn't have mattered if Glimmer hadn't used Adora as bait. They're really hammering in that bait thing. It's probably gonna come back later. DT is excited about how devious Glimmer was, but Catra thinks it means that there might be a few cracks in their friendship. I'd say more than just a few. Their friendship is pretty shallow, but Catra thinks that DT can take advantage of that, and DT looks like they're very excited about the possibilities. I liked how they were trying to show how things were going wrong for the rebellion ever since the spy came into their group, but there just isn't a lot of tension or intrigue since we already know about the Flood Arena Double Trouble thing. But at least DT can be disguised as anybody, like what happened with the captain of the guards in this episode. But this episode ended up being really disappointing for us because we've been asking for Natasa and Spinnerella for so long, only to have them be really grating when they are given screen time. Their characters were basically squandered. I guess it was still nice to learn something about them in the end, but their competitive nature wasn't really that endearing. And then there's Glimmer. Her actions just aren't logical. She could easily train with Castaspella, who seems like the obvious choice, but instead she would openly trust Shadow Weaver despite her terrible history. They kept pushing the whole bait thing with Adora, but honestly her training with Shadow Weaver is already a betrayal. It's not all that surprising considering the fact that Glimmer's not a very good friend. As far as Glimmer wanting to be on the front lines, it's not all that realistic for a leader to be out there who's going to handle all the responsibilities in Bright Moon. In the past 2 episodes, Glimmer was stuck in important meetings, and those responsibilities aren't just gonna go away because she ignores them. Glimmer's just a really frustrating character. It doesn't seem like she's learned very much over the series, and even though she's queen now, she's still brash, reckless, and selfish, and she's still failing to communicate with her team and her subjects. If she keeps insisting on this path, things are only going going to end in disaster. But those were our thoughts on the episode. What did you guys think? Were you guys happy to see Natasa and Spinnerella, or were you disappointed with them like we were? And how do you feel about Shadow Weaver and Glimmer teaming up? We'd love to hear from you. Thanks for watching, we really appreciate it. If you enjoyed this video, you can leave a like and subscribe to our channel to see more content from us. Also, could you check to make sure you're still subscribed? It seems like YouTube has been acting up lately. Thanks again, and we'll see you in the next video. Bye everyone. Bye guys.